Hey there! In this video we are going to show you how to play Moesteiro by the publisher Pythagoras Games. It can be played in about 1 hour by 2 to 4 players. In Moesteiro, each player takes the role of an architect guiding masters and apprentices in the construction of a monastery. The game is played over 5 rounds, where each player is going to assign their workers, masters, and apprentices to the different action areas, with the main goal of helping in the construction of the monastery by the end of each round. You can assign your workers to the forest and agricultural fields, which provide you wood and food, the village, where you develop the region near the monastery to gain victory points and benefits, the quarry, where you can buy stone, lintels, and columns, the construction site, where you acquire stonework tiles, and the stained glass window, where you acquire stained glass tiles. By the end of each round, after all actions have been performed by all players, you can help in the construction of the monastery, provided that you have the necessary materials and other requirements to potentially gain a considerable amount of victory points. During each round, you can gain immediate victory points with the king by developing the village and by constructing sections of the monastery. After the 5 rounds are played, you also score for all sets of different stonework tiles and stained glass tiles acquired during the game and for your position on the labor track. The player with the highest number of victory points by the end of the game is the winner. In case of a tie, the player with the highest position on the labor track is the winner. We have the setup already prepared for 2 players, with all ready to start constructing one of the most elegant Portuguese monasteries. You start each round by advancing the round marker affecting all players. Gain a stone and a wood. Advance 1 step on 2 different tracks choosing from food, labor, or construction. Gain 1 small dice considered the worker. Turn 1 small dice into a big dice considered the master. Lose 1 worker. After resolving the round effect, all players roll their dice at once, maintaining them nearby without changing any values. On the first round, you have available 2 workers and 1 master. In games for 2 or 3 players, there are action spaces that start each round with workers already placed, and other action spaces considered completely unavailable. On each round, you can count with the support of a different king that provides you with a special benefit for that round. The player chooses the desired king following the order determined by the labor track, and the turn order is therefore determined by the number depicted on the kings in ascending order. With the help of the kings, you can advance 1 step on the labor track, gain 3 victory points advancing immediately on the track, gain a stone, gain either a column or a lintel, advance 2 steps on the construction track, or be the first to construct on the monastery by the end of the round. Before placing your dice and performing actions, there is only one thing left you need to consider. Starting on round 2, you reset the action areas by adding 4 new village tiles, determining the existing materials on the quarry based on the strength of the masters, moving the remaining stonework tiles to the left and refilling the empty spaces with new ones, adding 4 new monastery tiles, moving the remaining stained glass tiles down and refilling the empty spaces with new ones. As mentioned before, the turn order is determined by the number depicted on the kings chosen by the players in ascending order. So, starting by the lowest numbered king, the players are going to assign 1 dice at a time in turn order into the action areas. As a general rule, you are going to assign your dice into the action area of your choosing on the leftmost empty space. However, both the strength of your dice and the fact of it being a worker or a master impacts the actual placement position for your dice. If your dice is of a higher number of all, it is always placed on the next available space. If your dice is of a lower number of any, it is placed on the left of those higher valued dice. In addition, only if your dice is a master, it also takes the place of workers of the same value. After all dice have been placed, the players are going to perform their actions, following the ascending number of the action areas and by the order depicted on the track of each area. We are going to briefly mention how you can pay to perform your actions and then describe each specific action individually. The pips depicted on the workers and masters are their strength, so you take them into account to perform your actions according to the strength you have to exhaust. Red pips represent the cost to be paid in strength by your dice, and black pips represent strength you gain and accumulate in the labor track. At any time you are performing an action, except on the construction site, you can spend pips from the labor track to improve the strength of your dice without physically changing its value. In addition, in case you don't spend the strength of a die in full, you gain an extra pip on the labor track, no matter how many pips you left unspent. Also, in case you decide to forfeit an action on its totality, you gain 2 pips instead. You can assign your workers to the forest and agricultural fields to provide you wood and food. To advance one step on the food track, you always spend 2 pips no matter where your dice is assigned on the track. In case you reach the end of the food track and need to advance again, you immediately gain 2 victory points instead. The cost per wood can be 1 pip or 2, depending on where your dice is assigned on the track. On the first 2 spaces, you can buy wood for 1 pip, but on the remaining spaces, you always buy wood for 2 pips. All collected wood with your dice on this area is stored on your player area in a personal supply. You can assign your workers to the village to develop the region near the monastery in order to gain victory points and benefits. The position of your marker on the food track determines how far below on the rows you can construct the village tiles. Then, provided you have the required construction materials to pay from your personal supply and the required pips on the current dice, you place the village tile on any allowed space on the village and gain the depicted victory points and additional benefits, if any. You can assign your workers to the quarry to buy stone, lintels, and columns. On the quarry, you always buy stone for 1 pip, lintels for 2 pips, and columns for 3 pips, no matter where your dice is assigned on the track. Even though stone is unlimited, lintels and columns are restricted accordingly to the number of items determined on the beginning of the round, based on the initial strength of the masters. You can assign your workers to the construction sites in order to acquire stonework tiles. The position of your dice on the track determines which stonework tile you are going to acquire to your personal supply and how many steps you are going to advance on the construction track. In addition, in case your dice was assigned to the rightmost space of the track, you also gain a wood to your personal supply. You should note that the construction site is the only action area where you cannot gain or spend extra pips. You can assign your workers to the stained glass window in order to acquire stained glass tiles. The cost in pips to obtain a stained glass tile is determined by how many red pips are depicted below that specific tile. Once acquired, the stained glass tile is placed on your personal supply. In addition, in case you acquire the topmost stained glass tile, you advance 1 space on the food track. The position of your marker on the construction track determines the order of construction of the monastery by the end of the round. The only exception is when a player has the benefit of the king, which allows the player to be the first, then following the construction track order. To contribute to the construction of a section of the monastery, you have to be able to provide partially or totally the cost depicted on the corresponding section. The requirements can go from construction materials like wood, stone, columns, and lintels, to stonework tiles, stained glass tiles, or even moving backwards on the food or work tracks. In addition, every tile requires you to move a specific quantity of steps back on the construction track. However, you only gain the total amount of victory points depicted on the monastery tile in case you fulfill its requirement on totality. Otherwise, you can deliver on the tile any required construction materials you have on your personal supply and gain 3 victory points per each. Only in case you are at the maximum space on the construction track, you are able to buy a single resource at the cost depicted next to the top of the crane, on your turn and only before contributing to a section of the monastery. Every time a player contributes to a monastery section, partially or on its totality, that tile is turned to the opposite side and placed on the corresponding section of the monastery. Any sections not built by the end of the round are also flipped and placed on a monastery. By the end of each round, after building the monastery, all players return the kings next to the board. In addition, the remaining construction materials on the quarry are returned to the general supply, and any village tiles not constructed are removed from the game. During each round, you can gain immediate victory points with the king by developing the village and by constructing sections of the monastery. After the 5 rounds are played, you score all sets of different stonework tiles and stained glass tiles acquired during the game. A set of 5 different tiles scores you 25 victory points. A set of 4 different tiles scores you 16 victory points. A set of 3 different tiles scores you 9 victory points. A pair of different tiles scores you 2 victory points. And a single tile scores you 1 victory point. Ultimately, you score for your position on the labor track according to the number depicted nearby your marker. The player with the highest number of victory points by the end of the game is the winner. In case of a tie, the player with the highest position on the labor track is the winner. And that is all you need to know to play Moesteiro. A special thanks to Pythagoras Games for sponsoring this video with a copy of the game. If you enjoyed learning this game with us, don't forget your thumbs up and please consider subscribing. Until then, stay connected and be safe. See you soon!